feels like money.
Makes me think of
It
that.
almost feels like
That,
that.
you know, how that paper you write and it makes a copy of it.
Yeah.
Like really thin.
Overlay stuff.
Well, you know, I mean, I was going to say local Office Depot back where they were closed. So.
Wish I was there older.
Gone are those days.
It's pretty.
I like it when I hand stuff out when I got left this to pick up. So yeah, like I said, I apologize. The Office Depot in Hackenberg was closed on the buy paper, so not the choice of office products at the Dollar General. Well, I'm thankful because they bailed us out on lots.
Yeah.
Not too wide. Okay, well, let's take a look here. Now, like I said, I've got the books out here, and like I said, it looks a little thick, so don't want to be scared of that. It's called 40 Days of Daniel right there. Each day is just devoted to a study. What we'll do is, you know, like, they'll take 3 or 4 days to cover one chapter. So we'll probably, like I said, condense that up and go, like next week, I think we're going to look at day 13 and 14 for next Sunday school. But I like, just looking through this, there's a couple of things here about this book. For me personally, it helps me, you know, with these, you know, I like it where it goes through the actual scripture we're studying. It kind of just gives you a little commentary and stuff, and again, just kind of previewing the book here. Talks about that, and then at the end, it kind of gives you major themes, life lessons, and then it has some, you know, a few questions for discussion and stuff like that. So I'm treating this kind of like a textbook like I do in classroom. I never just went straight from I let the textbook kind of point us in the right direction, and we just see where it goes from there. And so again, at least what this can do now, it kind of allows you to have where you can prep and things like that. And we'll see how it goes. And again, been sharing with you some of the things there with the with one company. So we just kind of went ahead and acted. Anyway, despite all that, along with some other sources I use. So we're going to look at the last part of Daniel 3 today. And of course, last week, you know, we looked at where, you know, kind of built on from the chapter where, you know, it looks like things were looking up as far as Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, along with Daniel. They'd been, you know, because they had, just kind of get us up to date, of course, Daniel had interpreted the dream, and it looked like the king was coming around to recognizing that God is God, for lack of a better term. And then we see here in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar set up a golden image to worship, representing him. And Daniel's three friends here basically just said, no, we're not going to do this. And now we're at the point where we're going to see the reaction of the king and what happens. But before we get into that, in the introduction today, you know, now I know, like I said, first of all, we're all human beings, you know, and I'm sure there's no one in here has ever just flew off the handle at an instant, right? So I want you to look right there. It says, think about a time where you were really angry, not just mildly annoyed, but boiling. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic, disrespected you at work, or embarrassed you in front of others. What happened next? Did you respond calmly, or did your reaction escalate things? You don't have to share anything like that, unless you just feel led to. But just want you to think about that. And it kind of, as I was jotting stuff down, what I do is kind of go through this. I'll just jot little thoughts down, and hopefully, like I said, it leads to, at least not a brainstorm, at least a brain drizzle. So, but it kind of led me to a lot of things there, thinking about ways to go, and thought about this example. You know, how many times where an instant reaction right there of anger solves the problem?
Rarely.
Rarely? Yeah. I mean, you just fly off the answer, you know, you fly off the handle. And a lot of times, I think we see that, it kind of led me to what, I was also looking at as a, especially for 20 years, one of my big pet peeves with education policy is too many knee-jerk acts. Boom. Here's something happens. Knee-jerk action right at that point. They think about the consequences or the unintended, they realize unintended consequences. I try to think along those lines. And I'm the same way. So let's just use the example here. Road rage about that. Somebody cuts off in traffic. I'm sure for a while there we used to have watch rage video on YouTube for entertainment purposes. But let's think about it. Does it make you say something that you natural reaction, right? So at that point, why does it make you mad? Again, I'm heading all this. I'm actually a little excited because I'm going to look at this lesson here today from a different point of view. But why do we get mad when someone cuts us off right now? There you go. Stopping you from what you want to do. Now, Freddie gets on me because I like to ride in the left lane. But I'm not doing 40 in the left lane. I'm keeping up with traffic because in my theory, is it's actually safer to drive in the left lane than it is to merge. Because again, if you're going faster than the car, you're going to that right there. So every time you merge over to the left lane, whereas if I'm ahead, anyway, that's a theory of mine. I don't hold up traffic. If I see traffic being held up, I get over. So anyway. Yeah. Well, you never tell. But again, I'm not holding up traffic. I'm in the left lane when I see someone faster moving up, because I do make a deal where I get over. I let them pass. But anyway, not many people are here. So I just think it's a safety thing. It's one of those things. If I had the resources, I'd say. But nevertheless, I'm down the right hole. But back to what I'm saying. Why? It's keeping us from doing what we're doing. That's one answer. Inconsiderate.
Only thinking of themselves.
Yeah. Could I not say the same about the person that's road rage?
For sure.
Nah, I started out there being devil advocate. So anyway, don't be mad at me when we get home.
She's not mad at you.
At least what? I mean, and again, rightfully so. If you get cut off, I'm not saying you don't have a right to be upset.
Until they cut you off and then turn back off in front of you.
Yeah, they. When it comes in, then, like I said, you blow the horn, you do this, and then all of a sudden, it starts to escalate. And there's other issues where, we see the parts that make the news and stuff. But if you think about that, why do we tend, and like I said, getting upset or blowing the horn, but I'm talking about in instances where people overreact. Oh, he cut me off, so I'm gonna pull a NASCAR and put my front of my car into the back of his fender and wipe him out. That's happened. Why do people do that? Let's get it less personal. I don't think there's people in here that we joke. Anger. Or at work sometimes. Maybe. When you get disrespected at work or when you get embarrassed in front of others, you lash out, don't you? You want to immediately fight back right there. And trying to guide y'all towards, when it gets down to it, a lot of those quick reactions is not only anger, but it's more what's been hurt in us. Pride. So how does pride play a role in how we respond to it? Because I tell you what, that's when I lash out and get, old pride gets in there. And as I said, it's not saying it's right, but that's usually the first thing. Boy, our pride gets hurt, we're gonna lash out and try to get right back. and we tend to over-respect, when, you know, if we feel disrespected. You know, thank goodness on Facebook and social media that doesn't happen. There's no overreaction there, is it? Somebody posts something, you know, workplace, politics, you know, we see examples of over-the-top reactions all the time that we see, you know, so, you know, I guess what it gets down to, there are certain triggers or reactions that we react to. And I'm saying all this because, you know, today as we go through, and again, I think a lot of us, you know, probably, if I had to guess, probably the least informed person about the Bible passage we're studying today is probably me. But, you know, kind of looking at it and, you know, from different points of view here. But now let's look at verse 3, Daniel 3:19 right here. And again, if you remember, right at the end of the sometimes, when we react and things, I think there's besides that we see how God is going to protect us when we stand up for Him right here in this. I think also we can get a lesson on just how to treat, when we are upset, we get, our pride gets attacked stuff, just what could happen to us if we just kind of react, knee-jerk reaction right there. Does that make sense what I'm trying? I don't know. For some reason that just stuck out to me that, he's mad, he's stuff, boom. And it's just like, you think about it from a coach's point of view. If I get, if a kid does something that makes me mad, I make the whole team run gassers or something like that. I'm so mad, I'm gonna make them run and run and run, and it's a 100-degree day, and I make them run till a kid that was doing everything right is the one that has a heat issue or something like that. So that's kind of the, and it could be, there's lots of instances there. So I don't know, I kind of, just being understand, hopefully, I feel like my pride is, and it's tough, is the lesson I've got out of it is try to take a deep breath and step back for a second. So I don't make a rash decision or a rash reaction right there. All right, let's go to verses 24 and 25. And this is, like I said, this is good right here. Then Nebuchadnezzar. Obviously there. Fourth man, a lot of it is, and again, this is one of those where, we see Son of God right there. What's the first thing we think of? Not only was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace, but who else was in there with them? Jesus. Kind of is it pre-incarnate? I can't remember. There's a term for it or something right there. Pre-incarnate. Yeah. I'm on the right track there. I mean, that's it. So yeah. And what's the obvious lesson right there? The presence of the fourth man in the furnace tells us about God's relationship with His people. What does that tell us?
He delivered His servants who trusted in Him.
Yeah, He's always with us. And I can remember, this is back in college, I was kind of I'm down. I was just talking to a fellow Christian, and I can still remember, and it's kind of just one of those where he basically said, Scott, have you turned to God or Jesus about it? He goes, I was just like, man, because I just had a moment, I was just kind of feeling really alone. You're off and just, I guess you can say I was having some poor meetings, but he goes, Scott, it don't matter if you're if you're in the jungles of South America or right here in Montevallo, he goes, Jesus is never going to leave you. You're never alone. And I can still remember that. Shane Harmon was the guy's name. I ran into him a few times here and there, and I see him when he used to go to Montgomery. Coached at Broward Christian forever, but I still remember that. And and it's that, I said, man, it's just one of those things where the comfort I had, you're never alone. And that's to me, like I said, you talk about someone helping you out right there when you needed it. But yeah, God's present with His people in His trial. He's always present with us in our trials. I think we all agree with that, don't we? Now, does that mean that the hardship is going to be removed? Maybe not. We want it to, sure. But if it's not, we have to really comfort in the fact that He's with us. And as we see right here in these verses, as we go through verses 24 and 25, from that to this, as we get back, sometimes, that's the thing about, and again, I'm not there, and there's probably, we can look back one day, but I just don't, and we got the whole story, but how people, when they witness some of the things they witness, how could they not believe? How could they not believe? I mean, you understand the fire, the furnace right here, how hot it is. You saw the flame get engulfed in it. You saw the guys drop, see the three bound men dropping. And as we look here in verse 25, he arose, said, "Lo, I see four men." And then let's go to right here. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm sorry, but you know. Like they were before. I don't know. I mean, I know when I grill hamburgers and stuff, I walk in, I smell like hamburgers for hours. Much to my demise, because it just keeps me hungry, even though if I eat. Or have you ever built a fire in a fireplace? Anytime there's anything like that, the effects of fire, always besides, whether you get singed or burned, but, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? So these people, you think about it, what these people witnessed right there. And what does that tell, what's the significance, and it was important also that Daniel even said that their clothes didn't even smell like smoke. Now, I don't know, like I said, I don't know about you guys that have, this is my first year teaching in Birmingham, but my apartment caught on fire. It had the dryer had faulty or something, but anyway, and I can remember I had to get rid of a lot of clothing and stuff. It was just because of the smoke smell, and it was almost a bad fire. We were fortunate enough that the fire department was literally right across the street from my apartment. You can see the fires, and probably by the time I called 911, I probably could have ran over there and just said, "Hey, But anyway, they got there. They did a good job, but. Anyway, so I can remember, you remember that smell, and so I think it's one of those things that would stand out probably for the people. You can't even smell smoke on them. They're not even, much less hurt and stuff like that. So we see right there. That's just, what does that highlight? There's no trace of harm, and based on the imagery that we get of what the furnace was and stuff, it's obviously one thing in it, folks. It just highlights what? God's protection, complete protection right there. So.
It says unbelievers witness and acknowledge God's intervention.
Yep. So all those people right there, they would, all those people that bowed down, they're seeing something right here. So that's a good point. I mean, it was and that's the thing right there. I think you start tying everything in together, hopefully right there, that when the people of the world see us relying on God and see our, when we have that trust in Him right there, they also see, they see God's power in us. And I think that's the same thing here. What lessons, some of the other things, and we kind of mentioned that right there, but what specific actions did God take to assure the three men and to demonstrate His power to Nebuchadnezzar right there? I think we mentioned those right there. They were thrown in probably a furnace that was no telling hundreds, if not thousands of degrees, and they walked out
Clean.
clean, just like they walked in. So we see that, you know, and again, but at the end of the day, you know, just again, Nebuchadnezzar, because of his pride, he's lost some of his best men, of his soldiers, of his court. And even though he lashed out at him, they walked out on him. You know, it didn't matter. God's power protected them right there. So also, as we look at it right there, in verse 26, after all this, it says, what do we see? Did he recognize? But he did recognize the power there. But he didn't totally. Do you think he didn't totally commit this? Because let's think about it. Probably, I guess. And again, I'm not an expert on Babylonian history and all of that, but they had many gods that they would worship. Is that correct? So some of the commentary I saw was basically he's just going to take, the God of the Most High. He's just going to. Hey, he's like he's just putting him in that collection right there. He's not the God, only God. It's the way is that not? Well, yeah, I know it's like yesterday we kept saying just an engineer. You have a doctorate, so I'm gonna really.
Yeah, I don't think, I think he actually commits in the next chapter.
Yeah, so he's on the right track, and that's what one of the commentators said right there. He's on the right track, but he hadn't quite got there yet. I think that's where we're headed. So you know what? And again, this is just something that just popped to me now. What does that teach us about this? About this process is, there's all sorts of things, but it started all the way back in chapter 2, did it? Interpreting the dream. Didn't quite get there, but slowly but surely, the actions of, between Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're showing the power of God right there. And it's taking time where, and it could be, maybe we witness to a lost friend or something like that. They don't immediately right there. They may not convert right there. And we just convert. Do we just give up and move on? No, we continue. We continue praying. We continue, witnessing, verbally, and also how we live. So as we look at it, just a few things here. As we go through it, how can Christians today apply the courage shown by these three men? And it's tough because we talked about it, last week. They had to stand basically. Everybody else was bowing down, but they stood up right there, and we can see how again where their faith and their their conviction. They stood firm. You know, and they resisted the pressure to compromise their faith and trust. And they kept trusting God, even though they were suffering, Lord. And I think that's the hard part sometimes. And for me, I'm always one of those. I'm just gonna get myself out of this. And he's like, kind of like when I try to fix stuff. I think I don't need to go to you. I'll just figure it out myself, or call or ask someone. By that time, I've got parts everywhere. But I'm free to tell you, there's a Homer Simpson episode or whatever, where he's trying to put together barbecue, and it's like 3 shows before barbecue, and the show did he drops that big pizza box. Why doesn't mine look like that? I lost it. Anyway, but yeah, and that's the thing. You know, a lot of times when I know for me, when I find myself in a place of hardship, I'm one of those. I can fix that. That's why I do the workplace. If I create problems and I want to fix it, I need to fix it. And that's kind of the way I need to, be more firm in my connection and trust God in situations. And another thing here, some of the lessons about the risk and what are some of the risk and rewards of obedience to God and that are most significant. You don't have to answer those. When I say risk, I'm not talking about risk of eternal risk. There's no risk in there. To trust God, I'm talking about every outside. What's that?
One of the risks is you lose control.
Losing control. That's a good. You got control? Yes. Obviously the rewards. Comfort. Sure. Things like that. Good standing. I don't think culture, but I never shared with and again, I said, kids are always, when I share with teenagers, or even kids, I'm going to share why, but my friends would try to be an example for them, but, they always, they respect it, and I think that's, same thing here, but anything else, anybody else on this?
You have to make a conscious choice to
Sometimes it may cost friends, not the fact that you just may have a choice there. That's for, and there's no, talking about when you start talking about hypotheticals, it's not possible. Yeah. At the end of the day, you've got to remind yourself, I think that for God. And that's tough. And even though we're in a setting, that can be tough to stand up for what's right when everybody else is looking at other things. So talk. And I think, as we said, it's hard. And for me, I said, I trust you back. I just got to give God trust. He shows us right here, the worst of the worst, that he's not gonna, that he's always, that he's with Chad Abednego. He's gonna be with everybody in the room right here. We just gotta let him control. That's, like I said, that's a few weeks. And I guess to conclude all this, again, kind of get this, but we see, I think, being encouraged to maintain unwavering trust in God in face persecution. He has bold faith, and he's going to use that as a witness to his power. And and here, if you remember, let's go back to what for last week. I'll go back to I think it's 15. Let's see. Basically, anyway, remember last week when Jack said, even if it's basically okay. So the phrase right there. And that's what we got to understand is, whether he delivers us from fire or through it, God's always present with us. And that's a comfort that we need a lot more. And we said here come out. So you didn't believe it. So that's for me to say that. It's not quite as serious as that, but the situation. Anyway, I'm just hoping all this is still, because when the prophecy starts, that's what I'm nervous about, because I've never come close to that. If I go back and look at it, it's just all these other reasons. I get where it's coming from. I don't have to worry about it. Questions, snide remarks, corny jokes? No? Like I said, next week, we're going to look at day 13 and day 14 ahead right there. So, and again, I drew this. That's how we get right here. Be prepared for first half right there, chapter 4, and read through it. And we need to kind of work it. We're going to take it, but now, hopefully, like I said, you got some rest material there. And things like that.
You said today, 13.
Yeah, maybe it's how we'll look at, maybe cover, and I was only having historical stuff, so I'm dragging, I'm worried about it. I'm YouTube a lot of that. No? Alright, let's see what you're up. So, go to Nathan, I'll share some exciting parts we had, you know, part of the right, so looking forward to, you know, looking forward to the worship. We'll look at prayer and have a time with us. Lord, again, we thank you for all your many blessings, Lord, and thankful for